computer. So here we go. Well, thank you for taking this time. I'm going to write my review, and I thought it was an awesome movie. But I wanted to hear from you a little bit about, well, just how did this come about? I know you've been talking about it a long time, and I remember hearing you all talking about it, but just never heard its origin, how it came about. So, whoever wants to share.
Well, when Rob retired in 2016, I was an independent producer. So you're kind of always looking for a story. And it's funny how we always look outside of wherever you are for a story. And sometimes the beautiful and story that has not been told is right in front of your face. So Rob's retiring and had been thinking about a little bit even before he retired. Um, but then when he retired, I knew he did not over 100 women were coming back, and you couldn't recreate that moment. You couldn't get to LA casting and say, okay, we need everybody pretend that when he comes in. You
Hey,
had to capture that moment and his reaction and the girls and what it meant to them amidst this time of reunion and bringing people together. So the unfortunate part is we didn't have time to get the financing in place like it should have been. And cardinal rule is, I probably did what the cardinal rule is not to do. And I was talking to my brother and put in the money and cover the first shoot because we knew we had to get it. We had to do it the right way. So once that was in the bag, we started to move it along piece by piece. It was a passion project. So I looked for other projects to supplement my income because all the money was going towards the film. And that's when I got the opportunity to work on Prey. And so I didn't know at the time I was going to be part of this movie about Father Peyton that was going to change my life, but it was going to open a door for family theater to come on board and allow the house that Rob built to make it to the finish line, to get to the place where it needed to be. And Father Guffey, I remember we were driving in Boston, and he said, that basketball documentary, why don't you pitch that to us? And I was thinking, gosh, I mean, I remember it exactly. It was morning, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And he saw in it something that, to his credit, and many people have said that, it's not explicitly faith-filled film in the explicitness, but the implicitness of it is. And he saw that, and maybe from a small town himself, recognized the beauty of that story. But without him and without family theater, we'd probably still be chugging along trying to get it finished. So I'm very grateful that they saw that was the game changer. Family theater coming on board was changed everything.
so Father Dave, what did you see in the story that impels you to take that on?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, Megan Harrington is one of the most incredible filmmakers I think there is right now. The work that she did on Dating Project, the work that she had done on Prey. So just the fact that she had identified this as a good story was enough that made me want to see it. And then when I saw it, it gave me such hope. Such hope, and it reminded me of, those of us who are lucky have had good mentors in our life, whether they're teachers, coaches, sisters, brothers, priests, someone. But I think coaches can be such a powerful influence when they're good. And Rob was one of those guys. He's one of those guys that was just a good man. And that came through so beautifully in the story. The other thing is, I was really conscious about the time that this was all going on. Pope Francis had been speaking to a couple different sporting groups. He spoke to a soccer club. He gave a speech before the Olympic Committee, and he's such a big sportsman. And whenever he talks about sports, he reminds people of the power of sports to unify people with diverse backgrounds, the power to build character, to develop a sense of sacrifice for others and the common good, of discipline and of values. And you see all of that. It's not an explicitly religious film, but it has everything to do with what it means to live, being a person of faith, committed to others, a person of character, linked to a community, united with others, even with diverse backgrounds. So I'm really happy that Family Theater was able to be part of this film and help Megan and the great team of people at Family Theater and from beyond to get it to audiences coming soon.
Yes, looking forward to it. But how do you both see Rob as a model coach in some ways, or someone that coaches can emulate, and why would anybody see that? Yeah.
I feel
Well,
like
wow.
that's your question since
I
you
like that
played
one
for
for
him.
you, Megan, to you. I think, the best way to describe it, so this is a spoiler alert, so it may not be, I'll just say this first and then we can talk through. How many coaches would have over 100 women show up for their retirement party? And of all of his statistics, the 865 wins, the 286 losses, the 38 years at one school, number 10 of the winningest coaches, to me, that is the most important statistic. They showed up. And they showed up because he did, because he gave 38 years of his life to a program, to hundreds of women, to a university, and to a community. He sacrificed of himself. He didn't take the bigger, better job because that wasn't bigger and better for him. He really is at the heart of something that in some ways have we lost, that longevity, that commitment. I mean, first of all, for him to say is amazing in coaching on his own accord.
Right.
It's sometimes a ruthless profession and it's stressful, but he was able to stay 38 years. His assistant stayed 34, 24, 22 years. And that kind of family, that kind of bond, that kind of legacy, I would think another university would be jealous of. So when you tell Rob's story, you just have to look to the women that showed up, and they showed up again. He showed up, and he committed himself to something greater than himself. He committed himself to women's basketball and sports in a time when people weren't doing that. We forget that often. It wasn't always this way. In 1988, you had 9,000 people show up to a cross-state game in Missoula, Montana. Usually other school in the country at that time that would have had that many people show up. So it's a hidden, it's an unsung story that needs wings, because what he did changed the game. Maybe didn't, and hopefully this will bring him to national attention, and only for the thing to show, here's how you can do it. Here's how you can build inclusion, family. Rob always met people where they were. He had the unique ability to motivate people and to know who he could push and who he could not. He didn't deal in black and white. He dealt in gray. There were differences in the way he treated players because he knew he had to get the best out of them. And he tried to understand the backgrounds from which they came. And I think that was also a game changer in just his approach and philosophy. It wasn't across the board. He understood that people had struggles, that people had life experiences, and people came from different situations, and he respected those.
So, like Dave mentioned, I didn't realize you were a Lady Grizz. And that's why this story came out, huh? You had the experience yourself.
I did. Yep. So I grew up in Missoula, and didn't know it at the time, but like working on it. When I was little, I wrote a poem called "If I Could Be a Lady Grizz," and I'm not published, but I did write it, and it was always my dream, and I knew it from a little girl, and I didn't realize it in the way that I do now after working on the project, that not every little girl had a female role model like I did in my hometown. Not every little girl could look up to and be like these women in my hometown. I was really blessed in that way. And it's the power of generations training up other generations, being role models for the next and paying that forward. So yeah, playing at the University of Montana, that's why I know it was special, because I was part of it. The community, it's just an amazing community of fans too.
Which you weren't actually in the film. I was surprised then. I didn't see your face. You were behind the camera only, huh?
I heard that once before, a couple of occasions. I am in the film. I always say, my friend actually then was finally, you got to say you're a filmmaker in the very, well, I don't want to spoil. Anyway, so but I always said I am in the film. I am the little girl they're interviewing. I am the one who's dreaming of being a Lady Grizz. I mean, I don't think you have to be in it to hopefully wherever you are across the country to say, I see myself in that person. And so I didn't need to be in it or want to be in it to express what it meant to me.
Sure. Well, it comes out because the way it's crafted, I could tell the power it had upon obviously you, but you could see by all the women that were sharing. I kind of sensed this build of like this family unit that was created just by how you crafted the film, and that was lovely actually, because by the end I felt like, gosh, I want to be a Lakerist. That was awesome. And I guess that's part of this. I mean, well, what would you hope? And I do remember this time when women's sports were not very, you know, advertised like they weren't. And I remember I was beginning too in sports at this time, and or around this time when there was like, I was a little kid, but I was like, wow, they never had a women's soccer team, or they never had a women's basketball team. And it only started when I was a kid. And I'm thinking, yeah, we didn't really get a whole lot of, notice and attention. So I guess what would you hope maybe that people get when they watch this, besides a little history, lesson? What would you hope that they receive from this, both of you?
Want to go first, Father?
I hope that people are inspired to try, and are inspired to support sports in their own communities. Megan mentioned that I came from a small town in Illinois, and high school sports were huge. In fact, I work I'm in a suburban Los Angeles parish now with a high school. And it always shocks me that they'll get 25 people at a basketball game when they're winning. More than that, there'll be 100 people at a basketball game when they're winning. Like in my town, if the basketball record was that big, they'd close the shops, literally, and everyone would be in the gym watching this basketball game. But then the other thing is, I was so touched by the ways that Rob was tough. It sounded like he was tough and demanding. But like what Megan said, there's some really great stories in the film of the ways that he cared for people personally. And it wasn't just about wins and losses, but he cared about people personally. And that what a great role model Rob is for any parent, any coach, any teacher, anybody who has the privilege of being able to mentor young people.
I think it's so important what you said about it's not about the wins and losses. And sometimes in school sports, it can just be so competitive to the point it stresses all the players out, because it's just like push to win. Well, what did he do differently? Obviously he won a lot, but what did he do differently that wasn't just about wins and losses, do you think? Or that comes out in the film, right?
Yeah, no, it's his approach to the sport, and the way, like, ultimately you want to win, but you need to be able to handle losing. You need to be able to become a competitor that can tell the difference between victory and defeat, and understand which side you want to be on, but be able to handle those together and be part of the team. He knew how to make everybody understand their role and how they need to fund. Everybody comes into college as the star of their high school team.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to college and you're not the star of the team.
Right.
Most likely. Some are still the star of the team. But he made and valued each person's position, even if you didn't play very much.
Mm-hmm.
He made you very much part of the team. There's a beauty and a way in which he was able to draw from people excellence and a belief in themselves, while also being very tough and demanding. And it's a balance. And I that's what makes him a great. Not every player who plays and is an All-American or a great player makes a great coach. It's a special type of person. And Rob has that intangible, an ability to not take things personally, to not be personal in the way that he comes at you, to have this combination of a family uniting towards a common goal. And families have differences, and families don't always get along.
Right.
But family unites when they need to unite, and they come together when they need to come together. And he had that ability to bring people together, a unifier. And Father said that earlier. He really is a unifier and not a divider. And that's what he did for generations of women, unified and prepared them for real life. That's what sports does. And you talked about the stress, now I hope the film also, and you don't go into a film, or at least with okay, we're going to make people believe this, and then we're going to, make them do this, and they're going to do that. It's tell the story. It's a true story. Right. That's the beauty of it. Tell a true story, make it entertaining, make it inspiring, make it something that when they leave, they feel better than when they sat down to watch it.
Mhm.
And I think right now we're so broken in so many ways that my hope is that when a family comes together or individuals come together to watch it, they feel inspired. They feel like
Mhm.
I'm not alone. I need to reach out. I am part of something bigger,
Mhm.
and just a little bit of inspiration, I think, right
Mhm.
now could go a long way.
And I just thought one of the inspiring parts of the film, or most inspiring part, was the inclusion of the Native American players, and that's what kind of made this documentary so kind of unique. I didn't expect that. That wasn't I like when you watch a sports movie, you're like, oh, you kind of know that they're going to win or they're going to do well, and then you throw in this kind of story of these young women on reservations and the struggles that they had, and that was actually so surprising and yet so moving to me. And I don't know, how did you pull that out or discover that or yeah,
Well,
made that part of a significant part of the film?
well, God, as we know, the maker. It was funny because Malia was a no-brainer. She was the first
Ooh,
Native American to play for the University of Montana, one of the first in the country, Division One.
wow.
Sent a big single, so she was like, "Okay, we watched, get Malia's story. That's important." And then Leanne's up in Box Elder, another fascinating, the stereotype that she was pregnant in high school, but she went on. She's like, "No, that's not going to define me.
Wow.
That's not going to define who I am. I'm going to pursue this with excellence, and I'm going to get my degree, and I'm going to go to law school." So these stories of just overcoming the odds. But we were supposed to go to Box Elder to spend more time with Leanne. So
Mm.
that would have just on our follow-up trip in Montana, and that's when my dad passed away. And when we went back for the next trip, because we obviously didn't film that trip,
Mhm.
um, Leanne wasn't available, or she was going to
Wow.
be out of town. And so I was like, okay, Malia was the first. And so we talked to Malia, and then Malia said, "Do you want Sim to come? Do you want talk?" So she got this little community.
Wow.
So really, so much more was happening at the
Yeah.
time. It was
Mhm.
almost unintended that we'd get the four of them around the table, and it
Wow.
happened out of tragedy, but God was just, it's another, he's just at work going, yeah, this is going to happen because this is going to happen. And that's how we got them together. And it was a beautiful moment for me to realize, I didn't realize when I was playing their struggles to the degree in which I was able to experience them around that table. The
Yes.
difficulties of, Sim said, "I wish I would have gone out when people wanted to go to dinner or lunch, but I wasn't comfortable. I just thought she didn't want to go." Okay, well, Sim has something else she's going to do. So a little more framing of push a little more.
Yes.
She wanted to be part of it. She just didn't know how. But we
Wow.
also didn't know how to address that because we weren't aware. So it was very awakening, and those women are just incredible. So again, that was unintended. That group around the picnic table was
Yeah.
not planned.
It was like the story within the story because it was really it was, like I said, it was surprising and yet it was really beautiful. It kind of speaks to the human ability to overcome
Hmm.
odds and what people's expectations of you are, and as young women especially, how they could overcome what was perhaps um, they were thought to just not do anything on their reservations, so I mean, in anyway, that I just love that part and I really really appreciated it. I think that really brings out a tremendous um, aspect to the story of Rob. And anyway, yeah, so thank you for this. Thank you for the story. And I look forward that it's going to go out. And how are you going to, is this going to be in the theaters, like you said, or is it going to be out in some theaters or
No, it won't be
no?
just by virtue of the situation. There was talk of doing actually a live event at Dahlberg Arena to,
Oh,
to play the film, but just the pandemic.
sure.
So maybe later there will be, where if a theater
Okay.
wants it, they could bring it, but no, not a traditional
Okay.
any sort of theatrical.
Okay. But this
Yeah,
is awesome.
a digital release, and it'll be available on DVD. And
Okay.
we hope that people will catch it, and people will be able to catch it on television or some other venues too, platforms.
Awesome. So it's first digital release. I'll make sure note of that. Okay.
It's worldwide release, February 23rd. Get your seat.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to see both of you again, and hopefully sometime in person.
Won't be long now.
Hope not. Well, thank you so much, and many blessings to both of you, and I hope it goes well, and praying for the success of the film. So you know.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, and thank you, Foster. Thank you for.
God bless.
I know.